And welcome once again to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Louis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Louis Bright Raven, 33-year veteran, comic, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games. And it's a Monday, it's manga night. In Quoth the Raven, we're going to talk about Area 88 by KAORU Shintani. This is a classic series. It ran from 1979 to 1986 in Japan. It was reprinted in America by Eclipse and later Viz Comics. Sorry about that. My delay for my opening for my video on my YouTube window was open in there. Okay, Area 88, also known as UN Squadron, publisher Shogakukan in Japan, Eclipse and Viz in the US. Creator is KAORU Shintani. The translation in America was by James D. Hudnall and Satoru Fujii. Touch-up art and learning by Wayne Truman. Released in the United States from May 87 to December 1988. 42 bi-weekly issues, but it was unfinished. And I forgot this because it's been so long since I'd read it. Age rating 13 plus, lots of war, violence, and death. What's it about? Shin Kazama and his lifelong companion, best friend Shitaro Kenzaki, are at the cusp of their flight school graduation. They both have pilot positions lined up with Yamato Airlines, but Shin has something that Kenzaki doesn't: the love of Ryoko, the company's president's daughter. Kenzaki gets Shin drunk the night before they are to fly back to Japan from Paris and suckers him into signing a contract, inducting Shin into the mercenary air force of Aslan, or Azran. It's spelled both different ways at different times in the series, where he will be obligated to serve for 3 years before he can leave. The only other ways out: desertion, or earn $1.5 million worth of kills before you're 3 years up. And I wouldn't recommend desertion because then you're going to have a life bounty on your head. And you're never going to be able to find any peace. So, stranded at Area 88, the isolated airfield in the desert, Shin kills other pilots and skirmishes in the air battles as a means to earn money. He finds he has become hardened in battle. Killing comes easy and without remorse. Even so, he longs to earn his $1.5 million and return home to Japan to his beloved Ryoko. But back in Tokyo, Kenzaki is aggressively courting Ryoko, and even Ryoko's father encourages her to marry Kenzaki, as Shin has inexplicably disappeared for over a year prior and is assumed dead. Not surprisingly, Kenzaki's motives for attaining Ryoko are purely self-driven. He has nothing really wants to do with her. He just wants to be in line to inherit the fortune of Yamato Airlines, which he already owns 25% of the stock, thanks to underhanded investing. This guy is really a repulsive dork. Anyway, Ryoko is determined to be true to Shin no matter how long she has to wait. Either she has to find proof that he's dead or that he's alive, and if he's alive, she's going to wait for him. She finds the advances of Kenzaki repulsive, and she suspects that he may have had something to do with her lover's disappearance. As the story progresses, her plight becomes increasingly desperate because she doesn't know what to do as the pressure keeps mounting on her to marry, and she has to make a decision which may forever alter her life. Meanwhile, Shin faces choices of his own. Well, like I said, why doesn't he desert? Because desertion is punishment by death, and Shin would basically be a wanted man and never be able to go back to Japan or Ryoko because they would be looking for him there. Among Shin's compatriots at Area 88 are Mickey Simon, a United States Navy veteran of the Vietnam War; McCoy, a greedy weapons dealer who sells pilots everything they could possibly need; photojournalist Go Rocky Mutsuki; Danish pilot Greg Gates; and Lieutenant Colonel Saki Vashtar, member of Aslan's royal family and the commander of Area 88. But through Go's war photos being released worldwide, Ryoko discovers that Shin is still alive and resolves to find him at whatever cost. What did I think? As I said, this was originally released from 79 to 86 in Japan. And the U.S. version was 42 issues from 1977 to 98. But for reasons I cannot find an actual explanation for, it was never concluded. Unfortunately, the writer who did the translations, James Hudnall, passed away in 2019, so I couldn't ask him. We were friends online and stuff. I could have asked him if he was still around, but unfortunately, he's no longer with us. Most of the other people involved in the production, I just wasn't able to track down. There could be multiple reasons for the non-conclusion of the series. It could be that the sales and the transition from Eclipse when it was going through bankruptcy over to Viz on their own made it impossible to continue. It could be that there were multiple different endings to the story and they didn't know which one to translate. It could be other factors, but let's talk about that part there with multiple different endings for a moment. In the original Japanese manga, Shin survives a crash and makes it back to Japan, but he suffers a head injury and doesn't remember any of his time at Area 88, which means he's sort of back to his original normal self and can be with Ryoko without all the mental trauma of having faced war and having killed all these people and stuff. But, it was kind of a cop-out. Mm-hmm. However, in the 3-episode OVA, that's original video anime adaptation from 1985, Shin got discharged from service to escort the King of Aslan to Paris in exile. Despite being free and making contact with Ryoko to let her know that he's alive, he actually flies back to Aslan, having changed in his time at Area 88. He doesn't think he's actually capable of being her guy anymore because he's so different, and he goes back to the base, and his ultimate fate is left uncertain. And then there's another version from 2004, a TV series, where they truncated and shortened the story to just after Shin lost his F5E fighter jet. And in that version, Makoto, the photojournalist, also known as Rocky, as I mentioned, was originally sent to Area 88 by Satoru to capture a photo of Shin dying to prove his death to Ryoko. Since Shin survives the events of the series, Makoto, swayed to help Shin, returns to Japan, derails Satoru's plot to marry Ryoko instead. Now, I would be very interested in knowing what Eclipse's plan was. I do suspect it was just translating it as Shintani originally did it, because the other two stuff didn't come out until, afterwards, especially the one from 2004. Again, I think it was sort of a cop-out when you think about the point of Shin just forgetting about everything that happened, losing his friends in combat, almost dying himself several times in aerial combat, killing all these other people just to make a buck, so to speak, to pay off his debt. But that experience hardens him and changes him so much that it kind of parlays into how many of our military who have served combat in Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf Wars, and their experiences making coming home to loved ones a difficult examination. I would have loved to see Viz release this series for modern day readers, maybe even update it so that it is pertaining somewhat to the era of the Gulf War. I don't know. The story, when I originally read it, however, it really hit home, because even though it was produced in the late 70s through the 80s, I didn't get to read it until the time that the U.S. entered the first Gulf War in 1990. And my then best friend was in the Air Force, and he got sent to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. He was not a pilot, but he worked as a mechanic on the fighters, basically. And so he was there on the bases on that stuff. And I saw a very similar change in his personality as Shin's, from the letters he would send to his wife and his daughter, the letters he would send back to me. And when he came back from that assignment, he didn't even want to be around his family, and immediately took another overseas assignment that they couldn't go with him on, over to South Korea, and stayed there for an additional 3 years. So he was like away from his family for like almost 7 years between the two assignments. And I can see that whole situation where Shin would say no and not go back to Ryoko and go back to Aslan, or, type thing. I can see it, because that's what my best friend did, sort of. So that could have very easily been the truer storyline for this comic. Sorry about that. That was my cat being a pain in the butt. Again, I remember as I read it the first time through, not wanting that to be the fate of the characters, as I was seeing it as combining the wreck. I saw parallels between that and what was I thought was wrecking the marriage and family of my best friend at the time. Now that we're decades removed from that, and so far as I know, my former friend got his shit together. We acclimated. Unfortunately, he and I went different ways because he was not getting his act together, and it was pissing me off. That was part of the reason. I'm not going to go any further than that. But I'm not as emotionally attached as I was back in the 90s when I first read it. It's still a really well-produced story, and I did really like Shintani's technical drawings of the jets and stuff like that. The character designs are okay, but if I hadn't made that visceral connection, what was going on with my friend, what was going on with a lot of the guys in my area who had gone into the Air Force out of high school and found themselves being sent over to Saudi Arabia in the 90s, and seeing the toll it took on them mentally and physically, maybe I wouldn't have connected with the book as much as I had. I don't know. In reading it without that emotional connection, I think it still holds up quite well, but it doesn't quite have the punch I remembered. It also doesn't know that Eclipse Viz never did finish the series. Maybe if there had been an actual finish to the story, I don't know. I have to shrug on that. But if you're a Top Gun fan, or you just want to take a look at a classic manga series, it's still a fine choice. I do wonder if the reason it was never properly finished is because Aslan is a fictional country in the Middle East. Sorry about that. My cat is, like I said, being a pain in the butt. Because of what's going on in the Middle East, maybe the publisher didn't want to upset the wrong parties. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. And the Midnight Monster is in my lap because he's being a bad boy. He kept hitting me on the back of the arm while I was trying to read. Okay? See? Everybody knows you're here. They gonna behave? Huh? You gonna behave? Hmm? Yeah. The reason I had to clap my hands is because he was howling at my bedroom door for no reason. He always wants to go in there when there's nobody in there. He wants to go hide under my bed for some reason. You gonna go away? Good. Anyway, this is a cover of Area 88. I want to get it closer up so you guys can see some of the detail line art that they were doing at the time. This is some of the stuff I really liked about it was the detail of the interior of the cockpits of the different jets. This was issue 7. This is just random when I picked up. Black and white, good cloud designs that are, just to give you an idea, they're in the mountains outside of, in the Middle East. It's desert that they're going to be landing on, this airstrip there. You see they're working on one of the jet engines there. That's what my friend used to do, is work on the actual engines and do repairs and stuff like that. Characters' faces are a little bit silly looking, I'll admit. Chris Hall says hello. some of the combat fight scenes. Some of his earlier kills, he's feeling a little bit mournful about having to do it. And this is jumps forward here to issue 16. We're in Paris. Again, another fighter jet. There's a lot of different fighter jets in here and different aircraft that they present. There's really good tight illustration, and then there's very loose, cartoony, expressionistic manga here. You can see the tight cartoony in the woman's design, and then the facial features of the man are rather loose, kind of like Jamie Jones's looseness in his line art from Spacao. And the facial features of the older man there. Again, they're back out fighting the fighter jets. They kind of do some interesting things going on here. The two jets have a homing devices on each of them, and they have to figure out how to get rid of the homing devices before missile can track them down and kill them. So pretty cool, interesting storylines as it goes. As the series progressed, again, they jumped from Eclipse to Viz at the very end of it, but this is still one of the later ones of the Eclipse run. It's a good cover. Mm-hmm. Here you get to see helicopters. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't mean to block all that out there. Let me do a little bit better there. The tank's hidden in the sand and they get blown away, more or less. There's a lot of cool little stories in there. Again, a lot of different variety of aircraft that they present in the book from different countries and different modeling for different mercenaries as well. So really cool storyline as far as the battles go. Again, I give it 4 out of 5 stars. I do recommend it. But that's pretty much our discussion for Area 88 for this week. See what's going on this rest of this week. Well, next week, we're going to talk about a new series for me. I haven't read this before. It's Kenichi Sonata's Gunsmith Cast Omnibus Volume 1 from Dark Horse. It's about female bounty hunter in Chicago chasing bad guys and fighting corruption from every angle. Could be interesting. Let's see what it is. Pretty thick book. As you can see, I haven't even taken this out of the plastic yet. I just got it this week, or late last week, I should say. So we'll see how that goes. It does have a parental advisory on it, so maybe there's We'll see what the rating is for it. We're not going to have a Tuesday night show this week. I just got informed I have to do something for a late doctor's appointment for my father tomorrow. So I'm not going to get home in time to do a really good episode tomorrow. So I'm going to skip this week for crowdfunding and indie talk. I apologize to the fans for that. But Thursday, we'll be discussing reviews. We'll talk about The Old Willis Place, The Dream Over, Errand Boys, Bug Wars #2, Welcome to the Maynard #4, Back Issue number 158, Mouse Guard, I think it's called Legend of the Black Axe #1, and Shudder #21, and probably some more books besides those as well. And on Friday, it's the QTR Review Crew, and we're tripping on the 60s, man. It's the Beatles animated feature film from 1968, Yellow Submarine. That's what we're doing this week on the show. So be sure to stop in and watch. If you have any questions, comments, requests for stuff for us to review, contact me on Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven, on the Muskrat channel at LewisBrightRave2. I'm also available. Of course, you can email me through this channel here on YouTube, Quoth Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. Email me at quothravenlbr72@gmail.com or lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com. And that is all we have for tonight, folks. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Quoth the Raven, nevermore.